Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of North Alabama Law Review. I'm your host, Shauna Hill, and today we have joining us Ms. Lacey Gardner, who is with Woodall & Hoggle Insurance, and we have Mr. Christopher Weston. Good morning, guys.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So today we're going to talk about commercial insurance. We're going to talk about the gaps that you need to look out for and also how to protect your business when you're starting a business or if you already have a business established. Chris, you want to dive in on the legal side on this side?
Yes, absolutely. So you've heard us talk on this show quite a bit about what happens when something goes wrong. But one of the main themes on this show that has been relatively consistent is being forewarned, forearmed, and knowing what's in your policies. And so we're going to do something a little bit different today. Instead of just talking about what happens when you have a claim or after something goes wrong or what you need to do if you have an insurance dispute, we're actually going to get out on the front end of this. And Ms. Gardner is here today to talk about if you're running a business and need commercial insurance, what to look for, what kind of policies you need, what things to avoid, what things to look for, and basically give you quite a bit of information today on how to pick your proper insurance. If you are, again, looking for commercial insurance, including what kind of business you have, what is looked for by insurance companies, what kind of policies are available, and essentially just giving you the front end of, starting to apply insurance or obtain insurance for your business. And that's, again, a lot of times very different than the legal side because, again, as everyone at home knows by now, I'm sure, insurance policies are simply contracts. And so what is on offer is literally up to the insurance company and the purchaser of the insurance. There are very few actual, limitations on, legal limitations on what coverage can be offered versus what can't. Ms. Gardner will go into that here in just a moment. But we talk a lot about starting businesses here, and so this is on top of the legal side of getting your formation documents, understanding who your partners or your LLC members will be, understanding the formality and the formation and what, you're looking for in a lease or in a property. What we're here to talk about today is protecting all of that well before anything has actually happened. So, Lacey, you want to jump into this?
Well, I would say that commercial insurance isn't a one-size-fits-all. It's really tailored and based upon the type of operation and the business that you're starting. So every business insurance is going to look different, and there isn't a one-size-fits-all policy for anything.
Okay. So when you're first speaking with a potential client or insurance customer, what kind of questions do you ask them to have them, fill in the gaps of what you think they might need to look for in insurance?
So I actually start by really understanding the details of their operation, what kind of services that they're providing, who they're providing the services to, the level of services that they're providing. And then I really do a deep dive to understand every aspect that I'm able to, and then even going back and reviewing what I do find is it ends up leading to more questions to further understanding, because that's the only way that we're going to be able to truly cover. And I think that that's one of the faults of going direct or doing something online, is you lose that advantage as a business owner of having an advisor sit and ask the right questions to understand the capacity of the work that you're doing and who you're doing it for, to make sure that all of those areas of exposures are covered.
Okay. Are there any areas of exposure that literally there just aren't policies for? We've spoken quite a bit that work product often is not covered by insurance. Are there policies that will cover things, or at least available, because I've not seen one, that will cover something like work product?
When you say work product, define that for me.
Good question. So let's say someone's building a building. Will it cover if they build it wrong? Is there any policy that will cover it if they build it wrong just because they didn't know what they were doing versus, inadvertently dropping a beam on somebody's car?
Yes.
Okay. So those types of work product contracts do exist.
Yes.
do you have a lot of clientele that's, search for that kind of policy now that we know that they're out there?
No.
Yeah, because I've not seen one in over a decade where it covered work product. Are they far more expensive, or?
I mean, it's layers of coverage. So, like I said, it's not a one-size-fits-all thing. So we would look at what they're building, what they're producing, and who the subject is that would potentially be making a claim. There's product liability. So, for instance, like a hot tub manufacturer, there's product manufacturing coverage that if they built a faulty hot tub and it electrocuted someone, there's probably somewhere there's a coverage for it. When you're talking about construction and building things, I would say lean towards more of like a professional liability, an E&O, where if your expertise is what led to the damage or the loss, then there's potential coverage there. But that's part of the conversations, is we ask all of the questions to be able to build a really beautiful story, a picture of what this company does. So whenever I'm done taking the information from a potential client, I build that narrative, and I go to my underwriters and I say, these are the things that they're doing. These are the potential exposures that I'm seeing. Is there anything that you're seeing that I'm missing? And it becomes a group and a collaborative effort to where we together look at the various coverages that are available that we can plug in to seal any gaps.
So are you guys seeing a lot of people turn down that type of E&O coverage when they're, a professional or a craftsman or a tradesman? So are a lot of people turning that down when it's on offer?
I think that most operators, especially in the contracting field, don't realize that they have it available to them.
Okay.
But again, it's dealing with the right insurance professional that knows what questions to ask in order to be able to present it and be able to say, hey, if you have a potential claim, this is what the loss would look like if you have the coverage. This is what the loss could potentially look like if you don't have the coverage. And being able to arm most business owners with that information, they make smart decisions and they realize that they should have it. But I would say that is an ongoing trend recently, that most people in construction and contracting really should have that E&O product.
Yeah, it's like I said, in a lot of the litigation we deal with, we're seeing huge gaps in E&O coverage. Like, it'll cover if they accidentally back up into someone's garage door or something, but it will not cover bad workmanship. And so, to be perfectly honest,
poor advice.
Or poor advice. We've seen so much of that now. Of course, lawyers and doctors and a lot of, what they call white-collar professionals, we have, E&O insurance, basically malpractice insurance. But I was kind of wondering why there was such a gap in that market for so long, where, I mean, literally it's been over a decade since I've seen E&O or work product coverage in any kind of trade or craft, plumbers, electricians, etc.
Yeah, I think the world of litigation is what opens our eyes up, is whenever we see, and that's on both sides of the table, yours and mine, is whenever we realize, hey, this is a conversation that we probably should start having more often. And even going beyond having the conversation is offer it and give somebody the opportunity to decline it if that's what they so choose. But then you have that follow-up piece where you declined it.
Okay. And so it's something that people just don't realize is out there a lot of times because they're searching online, trying to do things conveniently, and still that face-to-face is important.
Absolutely, 100%.
One of the things I've heard you speak about, Lacey, is that, not checking in with your insurance companies or advising them on any updates can create those gaps in your coverage.
100%.
What are the typical gaps that you are seeing in the market right now where people think they're fully covered, and when it comes down to it, there's really this kind of gap margin going on that, it's a gray area?
So I think that there's multiple areas, and what individual business owners really have a challenge understanding is your insurance policy is a living and breathing document. It's a living and breathing contract. So as your business evolves, ebbs and flows and changes, so should your insurance policy. So if one day you decide as a contractor that you want to start installing garage doors, for instance, you really need to have that conversation with your insurance agent to know if you have the right coverage to cover that installation of that product. and what that looks like. So adding services, removing services, what you're advertising that you will do online, that's probably one of a very, very large area where I have underwriters come back and say, hey, he's a car dealer and he's saying that he only sells used cars, but he's not disclosing that he's financing as well. So those are the areas where you really need to be specific in the services that you're providing to make sure that you have the coverage nipped and tucked. Contracts, adding new vendors or projects. If you have a new contract that comes across your desk, that should be reviewed by your insurance agent to make sure that the coverage it matches and that you're satisfying your contract obligations for the insurance requirements. Adding and removing vehicles, adding employees, that happens quite often on the smaller handful of employees, owner-operators, that they decide one day that they need help. They add an individual to their workforce. That individual's work is not necessarily covered because we don't have that exposure disclosed and covered. Adding equipment, buying property, selling property. All of those changes in your business, that warrants a phone call to your agent.
So let's say that you have somebody coming in and they're wanting to, have their insurance policy evaluated, and you're sitting down and talking to them. As we've gone over some of the questions, but what are the kind of categories that you're looking for? Because it sounds like disclosure seems to be one of them. It seems like, what specifically they're doing and who they're doing it with. So disclosure, what they're doing, who they're doing it with, what else?
Who's paying them, how the payments work, subcontractors. If you are adding subcontractors to an equation, making sure that you have hold harmless agreements, additional insured wording on their certificates of insurance. Make sure that they're collecting certificates of insurance to make sure that they are even covered. And if they're not, it's okay as long as we're disclosing that information on their policy so that their work can be covered. Okay. I would think that probably the largest area for that is understanding the difference between an employee and a subcontractor is probably a really big area of education for most business owners.
It would probably be best, I'm assuming, to have coverage for both areas, but if that's something you're seeing quite often, is that something you can elaborate just a little bit on?
Yeah, I tell people whenever I ask, do you have employees or are you subcontracting? A lot of times they'll say no, and I will have to make sure that I go back and I explain and define what an employee is. Do you have somebody that's answering the phones for you? Do you have somebody that's running errands? That's an employee. Well, I pay them under the table, or I pay them 1099. You're defining things by the IRS standards, and I don't work for the IRS. I work for the insurance companies. So, and this is what an employee is. This is what a subcontractor is. Do either one of those people that you're hiring, do they fall into either one of those categories? 9 times out of 10, it is yes.
So the insurance definition versus IRS definition is two totally
different things.
Gotcha. Yeah. That's definitely good information.
Yeah.
Because for those at home, understand, because it's a contract, there's no requirement outside of very specific things, of course, like anti-discrimination laws, etc. But there's nothing that requires an insurance contract to track the same definition as a state law or a federal law. And that's very important to know. So, Lacey, tell me, what would you like to see business owners do when they're coming and searching for commercial insurance? What advice do you have for them as far as their coverage? I mean, we've gone over, again, the disclosure, what they're doing with great detail, how they're doing it, who they're doing it with, who's paying them, where they're doing it, the who, what, when, why, how, right? Mm-hmm. So we've kind of covered that. But what are some of the nuances? What are some of the kind of detail work that people need to know, like when they're filing a claim or making certain that there's not a misunderstanding between them and the insurance company when it comes to what's covered and what isn't, or if there is a dispute? What is kind of the breakdown of how they need to conduct themselves with insurance and in dealing with long-term insurance contracts.
So I had a coaching session this morning with a young lady that is just starting a business, and that conversation really enveloped what you just asked, is making sure that you're working with individuals that you trust. If you can't communicate or provide factual information to the individual that you're selecting to run your insurance for you, you need to find another insurance professional. Being really transparent and open, making sure that you can sit your insurance agent next to your attorney and your accountant, because we all three work very, very closely together. Being able to put someone in that trusted seat is absolutely crucial. It's necessary.
Oh, excuse me.
Bless you. But and as far as coverage questions, being able to reach someone, having that in-person or that phone call conversation, having someone answer the phones. Having someone answer the phone and be willing to give you the time to ask the right questions to be able to give you the right answers that you're looking for and the right advice. As far as filing a claim, it's where your agent comes in. You really should be able to trust the individual that you're working with, so that way whenever you make that phone call, you can say, hey, I potentially have an issue, this is what's going on, and have that individual agent look at your coverage, look at what you're doing, make sure if there was anything that wasn't disclosed, but still being able to put you in the right hands and advocate for you through that claims process.
Okay.
So I would say that rule of thumb, you really should be working with someone that is in your community or within a community that you're working in, that you can have that face-to-face interaction with. The doing things, operating through the use of a computer screen isn't always the wisest choice. It might be more convenient, it might be, the strategy might look right, but I can tell you at the end of the day, you're going to wish that you had a conversation or a relationship with someone individually.
When it comes to claims, looking at a claim versus actually having an open claim, you know, we don't get it personally, but we hear about it all the time where people say, hey, I might have a claim coming on my policy, but no action has been taken yet. The claim hasn't officially been filed yet, but we may have an aggravated client, you know, that is upset at the moment. Do you recommend that your business owners contact you and give you notice, like, hey, Lacey,
absolutely,
this could potentially happen. What can we do about it?
Absolutely. Documentation, communication, that's crucial in claims. But yeah, being able to have that, again, it's that freedom of transparency and communication and working with someone that you trust, being able to pick up that phone and say, hey, I think this potentially could turn into something. I had a situation like that over Thanksgiving where I had a client call me and I'm like, I mean, you can file a claim right now, but I think that you should probably just wait this out just a couple of weeks to see what the outcome is, because he really wanted to try to deal with it on his side before filing a claim. And he has that right to be able to do that, but us being aware of it, so that way moving forward in the future, we can make sure that other insurers, if we decided to move him to another carrier or anything like that, that we can at least alert the other carriers that potentially this could turn into something in the future if it hasn't been resolved.
Okay. Now, and one of the things me and you have talked about is writing contracts, ironclad contracts, to eliminate some of these problems in these claims. Does the kind of contract that your clients are dealing with, does that affect their insurance rates, whether the contract is vaguely written and leaves room for liability, or whether it's a little bit more tightly detailed and kind of helps not really eliminate, but dimmer down the liability a little bit?
I think that it plays on both sides, right? I think, you know, having a strong contract, and I believe that every contract should be individualized to the project. I don't think that you should use a one-size-fits-all contract, because there's nuances and caveats to everything. But having tailored contracts in place is going to certainly help the insurability of projects and cases. But it also, what we're doing is we're establishing your defensibility. And I think that that's one of the big areas that most consumers neglect to understand or know, is that your insurance policy not only pays claims, it also pays for your defense. So and nothing stops an individual from filing a lawsuit. You're innocent or guilty, it doesn't matter at the time that they file it. You're still going to have the cost of litigation to defend yourself. And that is one of the areas that your overall insurance policies is going to help you offset.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. I guess I have one question, and we need to get to is viewer questions, but so if you're looking at a policy and can interpret that language for them, does that help stick if they have a claim and there isn't a dispute with an adjuster?
So it depends on the license that the individual has. I mean, I do rule on the side of things that the first thing that I am is an insurance agent. I'm not a licensed insurance adjuster.
Oh.
Although I do understand the language, it's not my role.
Okay.
So there will be times that of course, I'm going to advocate for my client, but at the end of the day, I'm not the licensed professional that's adjusting the claim.
Okay.
So they have to rely on them. But it does take an agent to advocate at times.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Okay.
All right, well, we are going to jump into a couple questions here. So question number 1 is, how do I know if my business has enough insurance coverage?
So I think that you should be talking to your agent at least on an annual basis if you have an annualized policy, and most commercial policies are. You should be talking to them at least once a year. You should be going over any nuances and changes that you've made in your business, the purchases that you've made, contracts that you've entered into, projects, and also the prospective things that you're going to be doing in the future. Having that conversation in place also helps ensure the future.
I think one of the important things you mentioned before is, of course, talk to your insurance agent at least once a year, but anytime there's a change, reach out immediately, because you don't want to do a change, as you mentioned before, add a vehicle in February, but you didn't do your policy change until the end of the year. There's a long time for an accident to happen.
It happens so often that important, crucial step is just forgotten. And it's a lot of people are guilty of it. Mistakes can happen, but it really is important to be able to have that open line of communication with the agent.
Okay. Well, let's go to the next question. So the next one is, what should I do immediately after a loss to protect my claim?
So we use the word mitigation quite a bit in my world, and that's just the meaning of stop it from happening, stopping the damage. So you would want to, if there was property damage, you would want to mitigate or stop any additional damage. So that might be tarping a roof or reducing or removing water if there was a water leak. Photos, making sure that you're documenting every step of the way, so that way whenever you are reporting it and you're communicating, you have visual to be able to reference to. Notes, make sure that you keep documentation of everybody that you talk to, what the conversation was. Again, that's going to be the information that an adjuster is really going to like getting, so that way we can help defend you.
Let me touch on a sub-question off of what you just spoke about. So you mentioned, like, if you have roof damage or water damage, to put the tarp up, protect it, things like that. In the insurance world, once you're aware of the problem, and let's just say if you realize you have roof damage, but you don't do anything to protect it from further damage, is the insurance policyholder now liable for any of the additional damages because they did not do their due diligence?
They could be, yes.
Okay. Very good for us to know.
Mm-hmm.
I think we got time for about one more question. So this one, this person asked, can my insurance company deny a claim even if I have coverage?
Yes. So I think one of the most important parts of an insurance document and within the declaration would be your list of exclusions. making sure that you understand what is excluded in your policy, understand what those exclusions look like, because there's even caveats to exclusions. Asking if there is an exclusion, asking if there is a buyback coverage, because typically, for the most part, if it's excluded from a policy at a cost, we typically can get it insured. If a claim is denied, it's likely due to an exclusion.
Didn't communicate properly.
It wasn't communicated properly, or the exclusion list wasn't reviewed with the client for them to fully understand. That would be the biggest area.
Let me ask this, and since I know we had time for that, but I got to ask, to kind of wrap up our last question, mine is, what do you think the biggest mistake is that business owners make when obtaining insurance? What do you see that you really are just like, it needs to stop?
Well, I'll use a craftsman as the example. You're a craftsman. You're not an insurance agent. Leave the insurance work to the insurance agent. Work with someone that you can trust. Work with someone that is familiar with your industry, that is has relationships with individuals that are doing the same thing that you're doing, so that they know what the real exposures are, and be honest and communicate with them very well.
So it's the same thing I tell a lot of the people at my, the business owners I represent, as well as a lot of the people at my office, is don't try to do every job.
Yeah.
And they seems to think, well, I want to start this business, or I want to do this, but, well, I can't, or I'm not able to at the time have this professional and this professional and this professional involved. And it's like, well, you really can't afford not to.
Well, and I think in my world too, most people think that they're saving money, and they're not. They're not. The consumer doesn't pay us. Excuse me. The consumer doesn't pay us. The carrier does, and we work for the carrier, but at the end of the day, it's our service that is provided to the client that keeps our business alive. So trust us, rely on us. That's what we get paid to do, and what greater seat to sit in is you're getting advice and you're getting support from somebody that you're ultimately not paying for it.
And that's what I tell people all the time when it comes to coming and seeing a lawyer too when you start your business, is that it is much, 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 much cheaper.
Oh, yeah.
To see us on the front end.
Yes.
If you're starting a business, even on a major budget, you can absolutely afford to see us on the front end.
Yes.
You may not be able to on the back end if things go bad.
Yes.
So be proactive.
100%.
Okay.
Yep.
So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Real quick, give our viewers just 3 quick takeaways. If they take away nothing else, just 3 quick takeaways.
Work with a professional agent that you trust. Work with a local agent, preferably in the community that you're working in, so that they are aware. And always ask the question if they have worked with a professional in the capacity that you're in.
All right, guys, you heard it from the lady herself. If you have any other questions, you can always reach out to Lacey. Again, she's with the Woodall & Hoggle Insurance Agency. And you can also reach out to our law firm if you want to. Or, again, submit those legal questions to legalhelp@JMMT Law Firm. We'll love to answer them on air. Thank you guys so much for tuning in this morning, and we'll see you next week. Have a great week, guys.
Have a great week.
Bye-bye.